With the Mexico Grand Prix in the books, we're on the heels of the Brazilian Grand Prix, as well as a tight race between Ferrari and McLaren, and Mercedes and Red Bull, as well as a tight race between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, and a tight race between us, between myself and the Mike Allen. So with that, lights out. Welcome aboard another edition of F1 Starting Grid. Mike, it was, so many people said it was a boring race, and granted it was, but I saw a really competitive race between Hamilton and Perez.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it had its moments, but you know what? It's been a long time since we've had a yellow flag to bunch everybody up. So they get pretty spread out, and it kind of takes away from. I mean, Verstappen was 16 or 17 seconds ahead of everybody, so he wasn't even, it was unless he wrecked out, he was going to win. So I can kind of see how it would be boring, and Perez made a charge at Hamilton there, but it comes down to would Hamilton make a mistake, and that's he didn't. He kept it on the road and he kept it solid, and car for car, Mercedes is always going to win a 1-for-1 matchup.
True, very true.
And they managed their tires well, and I think if I were Perez, I would have went in for his tires a little sooner, before Hamilton and Verstappen, and then he might have won that race.
Could have. One thing I was surprised about is Bottas went in for 4 times to box.
Yeah, they couldn't get him right.
I don't know if it's something
wrong with his car. He bumped early in the race, and it just never really recovered from that. I think he might have damaged his car more than he was letting on.
Well, he gave it his all towards the end of the race there, but I was just surprised by 4 boxes from that guy. I mean, we expected more out of Bottas, to tell you the truth, but I mean, one race in Turkey, and that was pretty much the last we saw of him for the most part. I mean, he had 2 great races back to back ever since he, announced he was going out Alfa Romeo.
And you got to think too, Mercedes they're not going to do anything really to help him. They're going to do as much as they need to, but their focus is on getting Hamilton his 8th World Championship, which he could still very well do. So The season overall is pretty exciting, but I think it's going to come down to one race, to be honest with you.
Well, let's talk about that beginning part right there. You just mentioned about Bottas, kind of having that little altercation in the beginning there. Verstappen got a really, really good start. I could not get over how well just coming around the corner, both Mercedes before turn 1.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, coming from that second place spot, he took a good line. It looked like his car gripped well. His tires were, I think he got his tires right, and then he just stuck his nose up in there and forced his hand. And I think Hamilton kind of learned his lesson that this is the first corner of the first lap of a 71-lap race. Let's not get too worried about positioning. Let's just stay in the race. So he backed off. And it was brilliant. He asserted himself well.
Well, it turned out that decision made him come bite him on the butt there too, because he couldn't catch up with Verstappen after that race.
Yeah. After that, but I think that came down to his pit stop.
Yeah.
And timing of his pit stop. I don't know all the inner workings of what goes on. It would just seem though that if I'm ahead and I got my competitor behind me, that I would pit either right before he does or the next lap pit and get fresh tires. Especially if I'm ahead, and then I'm ahead more because my opponent was behind me and pitted. I could give up a little bit of that time and then fight it out with the tires. And we've seen him do that before, fight it out. So, but I don't know. I think those guys make millions of dollars to make those decisions, and we don't make any money. We can sit back in hindsight and say, "What if?" Just like any other sport out there. But Red Bull's got it dialed in. They managed it well. They managed their pit stops well. They had their car dialed in perfect. So couldn't get any more perfect than that. And
Totally.
Max kept it on the road. There was no fishtailing. He didn't spin out. He didn't lose time on any traction or bad corner. So he did well.
That was over the weekend. I mean, I told this on a live show there that part of me wanted that podium the way it was because of points, but part of me wanted Perez to pass Hamilton, especially in that stadium section.
Oh yeah, that was loud. You could really hear them when they pulled through there. Yeah, that would have been cool. It would have been cool if Perez got by Hamilton, and if they were close enough to Verstappen, maybe Verstappen let him pass to get the podium in his home country, and then hold off Hamilton. He'd still get the point. He'd still be ahead in points, and that would have been a neat gesture. That was kind of in my mind. That would have been a really cool sportsman-like moment, but they were too far back. 17 seconds, I think, was at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember.
It was a fantastic performance by Max Verstappen, though. I mean, just finishing out that far ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, pole to pole. Beginning to the end, he had it dialed in.
Well, there was actually a good performance by Ferrari over the weekend, finishing 5 and 6 there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I saw that I made this comment that Carlos passed Charles. I don't know if Charles had the slower car at the time, just for pace wise, but it felt kind of odd that Carlos passed Charles towards the 2/3 of the way of the race, and see. But it was a good performance by Ferrari. 5 and 6. They've been doing pretty well the past few races.
Not bad at all. And that but they weren't as close. They said 4 and 5. They were not even close to the top 3.
No. No, in fact, I think.
Let's see. Hamilton was 16 seconds behind the leader. Gasly and Leclerc were almost a full minute and a half behind the leader. So yeah, they came in 4th and 5th, but they weren't. That wasn't even close. And here's something that's interesting that I just that I found out. 6th place, Sainz, was a lap down. So he got lapped by Verstappen and still came in 6th.
That's how fast Max was going.
That is crazy fast. As a matter of fact, 6 to 10, all the people that got points, Sainz, Vettel, Raikkonen, Alonso, and Norris, all were lapped and still got points. They're still in the top 10. That's how. But see, that's what happens when you don't have a safety car to slow everything down. See, it spreads out that far. You can really get a good idea of how much more advanced Red Bull and Mercedes are when you got less than 20 seconds between 1st and 3rd, and then a full minute to 4th.
That's crazy.
That's nuts, man.
And we keep on talking about this, but just imagine.
Bottas was 2 laps behind everybody.
Well, I mean, pitting 4 times, and that'd probably do it there. But but just imagine George Russell in that car this year. We keep on talking about it, but just imagine George Russell in that car this year.
Yeah. Russell's they're going to set him up well. Part of me wants Hamilton to win his 8th, so he'll retire. Part of me wants him to come back so him and Russell can have some good fights. I say this about Tom Brady in football. Everybody hates the guy on top, but what you really have to do is sit back and just enjoy it. Yeah. Because we're never going to see this again. There's not another driver that's gonna drive as dominantly as Hamilton. Not in our lifetime.
Right.
Maybe when we're older, further down the line, but his name will be in the same breath as Fangio and Andretti, and I mean it's the greats.
Yeah,
Jack
Schumacher.
Schumacher, Michael Schumacher. I mean he's there. He's part of the elite.
Yeah,
So uh, you know, part of me wants Verstappen to win it because I'm really becoming a fan of his. But part of me wants Hamilton to win it because I think if he does win the world championship, I think he's done.
mm.
I think he wants to get that eighth championship. If he doesn't, or if it's close, he might come back for another year and try it one more year. But it surprised me how long he's been racing. I thought, you know, he's still very young,
He is.
and he's been racing close to 20 years. That's nuts, man. I mean, he started racing when he was like 17, 18 years old.
And also to the fact that 90% of the grid will be coming back next season.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to see some battles next season.
And the cars will be a lot different. So
Yes.
we're not going to have this we're not going to have the dominance that we have this year with a couple of constructors with everybody else struggling. They're going to be more on an even playing field. So it's really going to come down to the driver. So real quick, I buy this motorcycle. I've been wanting to get a motorcycle for some time, and I found it at a great price. It's a Yamaha Roadstar Midnight 1700 cc. It's a big bike. Rides great, but it's got the really loud pipes. So I bought it. I'm thinking, I'll just buy the OEM pipes and slap them in there. Well, guess what? They don't make anymore.
Those pipes.
So I think I found some off of Amazon. So one left. There's one left. And I knew, and the guy was standing there when I was buying it, and he's like, and I'll tell more of this story tomorrow night on my show, but I was just thinking to myself, I don't want a project. But then if you own a motorcycle, you have a project.
You do.
That's just how it is. It's like a girlfriend, Anyway, sorry, moving on. Tune in tomorrow, theradiomancave.com, on the air with Mike Allen. I'll tell you all about my motorcycle story.
Or here on YouTube.
Yeah.
We were talking about how good to great Ferrari is performing the last few races, but with that also, it seems like if Ferrari is on an upcline a little bit, McLaren is on that downcline somewhat past few races. I don't know what's going on in that garage. It seemed like ever since the Russian Grand Prix, they've just been on a downside. Do you see something different from that?
No, I mean it's getting near the end of the season. They're running out of money. Other cars, everybody's changing the configuration of their cars. I mean, look at Mercedes took grid penalties for engines, and they're getting ready for the final 4 races now, 5 races,
4.
Final 4 races, and this is it and I think a lot of teams too might be thinking, why are we spending all this money when it's all going to change in a couple of months? So why don't we just relax and get what we can?
Well, Haas is.
Well, yeah, Haas was on the clock race 1. I mean, it's got to be hard on those drivers though, just knowing that they're not in a car that can even give them a shot.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get in that car and drive it when you don't even have a shot? It's crazy. I couldn't do it.
That's why Red Bull, Mercedes, to an extent, Ferrari is still playing for this season by changing their engines, changing what they could to get out there and perform, to get that extra money from F1 and FIA to go into the 2022 season. That's what I see.
Oh yeah, well, and they're fighting for the Constructors Challenge.
Yeah,
and that has its own benefits itself. You got sponsors and everything else that are going to come. Now, it's going to be interesting with the salary cap and everything. how that's going to play. But in the end, you got a bunch of men that are competing, so they're going to spend what they can spend to win because they want that. In the end, they want that championship. They want to be able to say they're the champions. So, I get it. And let's face it, when you're fighting for the mid pack and you got four races left, it comes to a point where it's like, what are we doing? We have no shot at winning the constructors challenge. That's going to be down to Mercedes and Red Bull. What are we doing? We fighting to be best of the rest? I guess they could.
Well,
I don't know.
Even though it's not first or second, the old Ricky Bobby saying, if you're not first, you're last. But in the constructors,
I was just talking. It didn't mean nothing.
I opened my mouth on that. But even if you now finish first in constructors, you still get some prize money. It could be a substantial difference between third and fourth in constructors' money. So that's why they're probably fighting for that spot for fourth or third place.
Yeah, but again, it's all going to be evened out, though. It's all going to be evened out next year. So, again, I'm not in the pits making the decisions. I'm not one of the guys that are getting paid the big money to do that. But I can kind of see that thought process. Why are we killing ourselves and spending all this money now when we have no shot at winning the championship, and all next year it's all going to be different anyway?
Well, as you also pointed out, too, it could also be sponsors fighting for that sponsorship spot.
Yeah, there. That's true. I could see that. Yeah.
We talked about McLaren. Can that same explanation can be put towards Williams? Because the past few races, I don't see any progress out of Williams.
They fell off big time. They had their nose right up in it there for a couple of races. Now they're just back to where they were at the beginning of the season. They're just irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Driving that big freight train of a car around the track.
Now, what it also seems is Alpine is making a little comeback as well. If it's not Yuki Tsunoda, it's Gasly in the points. So they're trying to make something out of it, and this is probably the best.
Gasly's not Alpine.
I'm sorry, not Alpine. I'm sorry, AlphaTauri.
AlphaTauri, yeah, and he's a good driver. They need to put him in a car that's going to get him at the top. He's really good. I think the best thing that ever happened to him is him getting kicked off of Red Bull, the main team, because that just pissed him off enough to where he's relevant. He's a relevant driver, and when things are doing well and working well, he's right up there near the top. Fourth place and a minute behind the leader. It's pretty dang good in an AlphaTauri.
Yeah, and this is the highest AlphaTauri / Toro Rosso is positioned, I think, ever.
And he was over 20 seconds faster than the Ferrari.
Yeah. I think in the United States, we saw in lap 1 there that just something happened to his car. It wasn't performing well. If he stuck with it, in my opinion, I think he would have finished in the top 10, probably the top 5. But
he's a good racer. He's kind of one of those guys that no one really talks about, but he's always in there. He's always in the mix somewhere.
Well, there has been another great performance this past weekend. It was by me. I'm going to do it since I displayed your
name. Get it out of your system.
Okay. In fact, here you go. Our display names.
See that it says temporary?
Temporary. How long is a temporary? Is that to 2023?
I'll win this year.
Well, in fact, let's get this out of the way. There we go. 508 against Mike's 447 and Chaz's 410. He literally phoned in his picks. So,
where are you, Chaz?
I don't know.
I don't want to hear this. I work at night bull crap because I work at night.
So with that, we got the Brazilian Grand Prix. Before we give our picks, I've been looking back at the past decade of the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Man, come on.
You just saw that? You just saw it. Thank you. Because I am the man right now. Thank you. I am the man. I picked every single thing right over this past week. I couldn't be happier. I could not be happier. But I looked at the past decade at the Brazilian Grand Prix minus 2020 because of the COVID situation. And so far, it is unpredictable, just like Monaco. Lewis Hamilton has won twice. I think, actually, the last winner there, he also won twice. No, actually, only won once, and that is Max Verstappen. And Sebastian Vettel won twice there, once in Red Bull and once in Ferrari. So this is going to be a very difficult decision to pick. So, Mike, go with it. Who is going to be on your podium this weekend?
I just have to go for Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez. I mean, it's safe.
And what about your wild card?
We're getting down to the nitty gritty. You know what? I'm gonna cast my lot with Williams again. I'm gonna say that Russell gets into Q3.
Okay.
I think Mr. Saturday's got one more in him.
I think so. Now, honestly, I had the same podium as you, so I got to change it up a little bit. And for Bottas actually does pretty well in Brazil when he was with Williams and Mercedes. So I'll go with Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, even though Perez has been doing very well. He finished third the last 3 races. I'll go with Valtteri Bottas at number 3, just to change things up for you.
Don't do it for me.
Well, okay,
I don't want you to come back later when I smoke your ass at the end of the season and say, well, that one time I did you a favor, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear any of that stuff.
Okay, fine. I'll have the same podium as you.
All right.
I'll go with Perez. So it's Verstappen, Hamilton, and Perez. Checo. 1, 2, 3. And my wild card is one of the Ferraris will be in the top 7 once again.
I was weak. I would have stood up and said, I'm making my choice. Now go ahead.
What will happen if you lose at the end of the season?
I don't know. Let's see. If I lose, nothing. Nothing will happen. And you know what happens when I win? No. Probably nothing.
Nothing.
Hopefully it's entertaining to the folks that tune into the show. That's none of this puts any money in my pocket.
No.
Yet.
But Chaz once again has Lewis Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Valtteri Bottas as his podium, and since Vettel was finished in the top 7 last race, he went with both McLarens will be in the top 7 this race. Change things up.
Yeah, that could happen.
But back to your picks there. How's your fantasy football, by the way, with Baker Mayfield?
You know what? We didn't do it this year because of my move and everything. We never got that off the ground. But everybody's bagging on Baker Mayfield, but he's lasted the longest of any quarterback that's ever taken the helm at Cleveland, and they're relevant. They're not. They don't suck. When you play Cleveland, you're gonna have to show up because they're getting their defensive act together. And Baker's a solid quarterback. If they get the right people around him, Odell Beckham wasn't the right people. And everybody's talking about how great an athlete and great a receiver he is, and that's fine. But Randy Moss was great, but he wasn't great until he got around leaders that put him in check, and he was part of a team. And Odell, I think, is a cancer. He's selfish, and he doesn't He's complaining about not getting the ball. Well, how many blocks did you throw? How many routes did you run to draw off to safety so the other guy could catch the ball? You know what I'm saying? That's what they need. So, and that's how you become a New England Patriots or now the Buccaneers or even the Saints. You have unselfish players doing their job. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad they got rid of Odell. I hope, I wish him well, but I think Cleveland will be better without him.
No, cool. Don't let him go to the Lions, though.
They can't get any worse.
No, well,
We were on the clock week 3. What are you talking about?
phoning it in there.
You talk about a team that desperately doesn't want to even show up. That's the Detroit Lions. What a train wreck.
Well, I'm not going to let my ego get to me, so I'm going to turn this off here. There. But to your point earlier about 23 races, our Twitter poll of the week was with F1 race calendar, is 23 races enough for the 2022 season? 79% of you guys said yes. As for it is enough. In fact, a couple comments here. One particularly by our friend from F1 USA. He said it's too many. The calendar should be only like 18 to 20, in my opinion. F1 fan 2 says we're losing the novelty. It just becomes a chore when it's too many. And your opinion on that, Mike?
Well, that sounds like two guys that put beans in their chili right there. Because
for the record, I don't do that.
If we could have an F1 race every weekend, it wouldn't be enough for me. But I see their point. You want it to be special. You want there to be a little bit of sense of anticipation and wonderment. And there was a documentary that I turned you on to, made back in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, called "The Quick and the Dead." Which, if you are an F1 fan, you must go to Amazon and buy it. I think you can buy it for like $8. It's called "The Quick and the Dead." Stacy Keach is the narrator. It's got all the names of the late 60s and early 70s. Jim Clark and Jackie Ickx and Severt and all that stuff. And it's just a great look at F1 and the history of it and how it was a traveling circus. Every town it went into, it was the event, and there was only like 6 or 7 races a year back then. Of course, they lost somebody every weekend back then, so they couldn't. If they had 20 races back then, they would have a whole new slew of drivers by the end of the circuit because everybody'd be dead. But it's a great documentary about F1, kind of a peek into that nostalgia, and so I can see where they're coming from. I mean, selfishly, I want to watch it every weekend, but realistically, it does make sense. It makes sense that you have a little bit of a anticipation, a build up. Of course, there's great storylines going on this year, so it makes it more special when that weekend comes. But I do like these double up weekends, man. I ain't gonna lie. I already got my DVR set. So.
Well, also that documentary you just pointed out is on Amazon Prime. You can rent it for $4.
Yeah, rent it or buy. I think I bought it for $8 just to have it. So when it goes away, I can just go back on. Because I still go back and watch it, and just to kind of give you an idea of how old it is, they had a sequence of a wreck. I can't remember. I think it was at Zandvoort. Nobody was killed, but like 8 cars were in a wreck, and and they were lifting one of the cars up. And Stacy Keach is the narrator, which is I think he narrated everything in the 70s. I don't know, but they lifted a car up, and he's like, "There goes $310,000 worth of car," and I'm like, $310,000 worth of car? Holy shit! Because it's about 26 million now.
At least
it's just kind of funny because you see the difference in the in the eras and with inflation and everything. $310,000 is the tires that they put on them now. It's like the brake assembly's $310,000. That's a cheap part now. That was the whole car back then.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Back then, I mean, you had the almost wood fiberglass or
Oh,
plywood underneath the
they were
car.
just they were just fast go karts is all they were. I mean, they're crazy how fragile those cars were, and still going the same speeds as they're going today. So yeah, but it's a really good
Yeah, I
documentary.
watched that. I watched that Quick and the Dead too. It was fascinating. As you pointed out, they almost lost a driver a race, and they were previewing like one driver, one race, and then they have to come back and said he passed away this past weekend. So I mean,
Well,
it was
they were following Severt, and Severt died uh, at Watkins Glen in a practice. It wasn't even a race; it was a practice. So, and that hastened Jackie Stewart's retirement from the sport. So,
that's another great right there. We're talking about greats earlier with Lewis Hamilton and Schumacher and stuff, but that's another great right there too.
Flying Scotsman.
Fine Scotsman.
Yeah, I wish they'd make a movie about his life. It's fascinating. And
Mm.
another good documentary, I think I mentioned it to you, is called Weekend of a Champion. It was made by what's the director? Uh, Roman Polanski, who was good friends with Jackie Stewart, and he made a movie called Weekend of a Champion where he followed Jackie around during Monte Carlo, 1968. And that's another really good documentary to kind of see the old cars and the old drivers. Jim Clark is in there, and uh, you know, and just seeing how small and how fragile those cars were. It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
And just a little tidbit here: all those cars still exist. All those cars are still exist in running condition. They were talking to the director of Rush, uh,
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard. They were talking to Ron Howard, and they were discussing about how they were going to film these sequences and get these cars, and they were talking about CGI and everything. And one of the producers says, "Oh no, we got all the cars. Matter of fact, not only do we have all the cars, we have the exact cars that raced in that race." And so when you watch the race sequences in Rush, when the actor's sitting in uh, James Hunt's car, that was James Hunt's car
Mm.
from that era. All the cars are all restored and owned by collectors. Isn't that crazy? And what's his name? Uh, the other guy, the German,
Oh, Lada.
Lauda, Nicky Lauda. That was his car that he owned that he gave for them to use in the movie, and that was the car he wrote, the Ferrari. All
Mm.
those cars are in working condition, and they run, and they're owned by collectors, and they all run. And matter of fact, they have races. They race them still. They don't race them as hard as they raced back in the day, but they'll run them around a track. And
I could
you
just
know,
imagine him on set, Niki Lauda. He actually probably worked on it to help it get
oh, he
going.
did. No, yeah, he was one of the technical advisors on that movie.
Mm.
So, yep,
That's
that was
amazing.
that's a great movie about F1, by the way. And that whole 1974 was the year that solidified me as an F1 fan. Was that whole Hunt Lauda thing back then? But I was a Jackie Stewart fan before then.
That was actually the movie that got me into Formula One. That
Rush,
got me, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
got me involved.
I lived through that. But back then, you watched maybe 3 races a year. Monte Carlo, of course, the American Grand Prix, and maybe another one on ABC's Wild World of Sports. And other than that, we didn't have all the stuff that we have now. You had to. I got it in Racing Magazine. So there was an F1 Racing Magazine that I would go down to Bill and Carol's next to my elementary school, and I would buy a copy for 75 cents or whatever it was back then. And that's how I followed racing. We didn't have the computer. We couldn't look things up. We didn't have YouTube to check it out. We had to, I had to follow it through these magazines. And of course, I'd find out when it was on with the TV guide. I would go through the TV guide and highlight with a highlighter and hopefully catch a race.
Well, hopefully we catch this race this weekend. It'll be great. The Brazilian Grand Prix. It starts 11 o'clock our time. So it'll hopefully be a great viewing, a great race all the way around. Can't wait for it. In fact, in the meantime, we got a new Twitter question of the week with majority of drivers already set for the 2022 season. I think other than the last seat for Williams, the only other possible seat that can be filled is the one at Alfa Romeo. So the Twitter question of the week is, will Antonio Giovinazzi sign, or will Alfa Romeo sign Antonio Giovinazzi for the 2022 season? We'll discuss that next week, as well as breaking down the Brazilian Grand Prix for you. In the meantime, like, share, and subscribe. Follow us here on Twitter. Check out our other videos as well as at Former Racing as a handle for both Facebook and Twitter, and email us, theformerracing@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time right here on The Former Racing, where I'm still the man.